Yeah, I know you did, honey. Here we go.
Jane Byrne became the first female mayor of Chicago. In doing so, she became the first female mayor of a major U.S. city. She served one term from April 16, 1979 to April 29, 1983. She beat Michael Bilandic in a landslide victory. Michael Bilandic was leading the whole way. No one thought she would win. How did she win? There are several factors that are believed to have led to her victory. Was it because the officials were unprepared for cleaning the streets after the notorious blizzard that left 18.8 inches of snow on the ground? Was it that Mayor Bilandic was thought to have been oblivious to and downplayed the severity of the storm? Or was it that the Chicago Transit Authority's response was inadequate to serve the needs of the citizens during this crisis? But this is Chicago. We're not afraid of snow. We average 38 inches of snow each year. Chicago Public Schools rarely closes down. How is it possible that a snowstorm can affect the results of an election? In a typical year, Chicago gets 38 inches of snow. In the 1978-1979 winter, Chicago got 89.7 inches. There were already 9 inches of snow on the ground from a New Year's storm. The snow from January 13th and 14th kept adding to the original amount. While kids were having fun, adults were shoveling the snow. All businesses were forced to close for many days. O'Hare, the world's busiest airport, closed for 46 hours. The officials were so busy with cleaning the main streets that the citizens were forced to clean the side streets themselves.
You know, they forgot about the side streets. That's when you couldn't, some of the streets was unpassable. Because I remember one night I was coming home and you could come down the main streets. Like I went down Ashland to 87 and came over 87. And I got to Bennett and I turned into Bennett and I got stuck. I couldn't even go down Bennett because the city couldn't do the side streets. They were so busy working with the main streets, they didn't even mess with the side streets. People were walking to the grocery stores. They couldn't even drive because it was just that bad.
When the Chicago custom of saving your parking places with the furniture started.
Ah.
Now it might have started in isolated areas earlier, but this was the first time I remember seeing it because people cleared all that snow out. You finally drive out, you don't want some bozo coming and taking your parking place while you go on, so you put the kitchen chairs out there.
People would come out and dig out spots, just like I went out there and dug out 2 parking places in front of the house. Well, people would, if you didn't put chairs out, they would come down and those parking places were there where they could get over. They would pull over and leave the car. They might live down 2 blocks from here. They would park the cars and walk the rest of the way.
Since all other forms of transportation were unavailable, people were forced to use the ways that were made for snow. The snow removal process was taking too long. People became fed up. Some even resorted to making videos to express their frustration.
They say Chicago works. What works? I work. Does this look like it works? City Hall does not work. I work. All right, Marvin, try it now.
Meanwhile, Mayor Belanek was saying that everything was fine. As Belanek said that everything was fine, O'Hare was still closed.
A woman complains that half-empty buses, and I'm sure you've all heard these a million times before, at State and Wacker this evening would not stop for passengers, that a CTA supervisor was telling the bus drivers not to stop and wouldn't say why.
They decided from a purely logistical standpoint that they were going to run on the Lake Street, the Green Line, they were going to run the trains express from the western suburbs into the city without stopping at the inner city stops. And here would come the L train, and it would whip by, and it'd stir up the snow, and people would be looking, and what's going on with this heartless city administration? The city is catering to these suburbanites. Of course, the primary election day comes, and all those people in the suburbs that Belanek could help, they can't vote in the Chicago primary.
Right.
People in the inner city who were standing on those L platforms, freezing with the icicles coming down from their hair, they can vote. And they figured, well, we'll give this lady Jane Byrne a chance because Belanek isn't cutting it. And that's what they did.
Barbara Flynn Curry, a Democratic member of the Illinois House of Representatives, charged the CTA with blatant and institutional racism when they refused to send trains into black neighborhoods. What role do you think race played in the election?
Well, I think what happened when they began running the L trains express, leaving people at the station, what they were doing was they're running them express to the far edges of the city and even perhaps in some instances into the suburbs. Well, it was the Chicagoans who were left behind, Chicagoans who had a vote, had an opportunity to vote for or against Mr. Belanek for mayor. And a lot of the people who were left behind, whose stations were not stopped, but who were at stations where the trains didn't stop, were African Americans. So I think there was very much a sense. I don't know that that was the reason why they decided to skip these stations. Some have argued that those were stations with much smaller numbers of commuters than some of the outlying stations, but whether or not it sure looked like a slap in the face, and certainly it was one of those things that I think stayed with people, so that by the time we got to Election Day, less than a month later, people had pretty long memories and they weren't about to forget it. The fact that they were maybe not very many, but that they tended to be people of color, made it possible for Belanek to look like, whether he was or was not, make him look like a racist. And to me, that was perhaps the most important reason why he lost. Every mayor since that the blizzard of '79 has made snow removal the first priority.
It seems as though the blizzard of 1979 was a turning point in the history of Chicago politics and women in politics. As we have seen, the citizens held Mayor Belanek accountable for the effects of the snowstorm. In fact, it appears as though he was oblivious to the severity of the storm. Mayor Belanek's Department of Streets and Sanitation was unable to adequately remove the snow from the streets. The CTA's response was inadequate to the needs of the citizens during this crisis. As a result, many African Americans felt that Michael Belanek neglected them regarding CTA services. The result of this was an outcry by the people, which was felt several weeks later in the election booth as Chicago elected the first female mayor of a major city.